Welcome to the For the Church podcast, another great gospel-centered resource from Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. My name is Jared Wilson. I'm an associate professor of pastoral ministry and author in residence at Midwestern Seminary. And I'm here as always with my friend and my colleague and my co-host, Dr. Ronnie Kurtz, assistant professor of systematic theology. It is a mailbag today.
We're back.
I know. I think the last one was 4 weeks ago. We probably should start doing these. We're starting to get more. People are sending these things in.
Yeah.
And I get more regular emails now than used to. Used to I have to beat the bushes on social media to get people to send questions. But now enough come in.
Questions are percolating.
I'll probably still put some social media feelers out there, but it's catching on.
Keep them coming.
Keep them coming.
Keep them coming.
We would love to see them. This is the first question right off the bat. This comes from Matt via email. Matt says, how should we feel about two brothers being elders together at the same church? In the different scenarios, like maybe one is staff and one is a lay pastor, or they're both lay pastors, or they're both staff. And to add more flavor, what about twins?
We always need flavor.
Well, Matt is a twin himself.
Ah, okay.
You know what's really cool is so this is not that Matt, but I have a friend named Matt Bedzik, and he and his twin brother Mitch Bedzik.
Oh, I know them.
They're both Midwestern grads.
Yeah,
they're both pastors.
Yeah.
At
the same
Emmanuel
church?
Community Church in Elmira, New York. I was just there a few weeks ago preaching. I've been up there numerous times. They're good friends. I've preached for them. Matt is the lead pastor. Mitch is a lay pastor. But there's only, I think, four pastors at the church.
And it's working?
And it works well.
You have to be the only person who knows two Matts that are twins that are
well, I don't know this Matt. I don't think that I do.
Just like you're the only person ever to have two podcasts with two guys named Ronnie.
I'm collecting Matts who are twins and Ronnie's who are podcasters.
And Ronnie's out there?
That's
we
right.
need a different spelling, though. Like me and Ronnie Martin have two.
You need one with a Y.
You need like a Y or a single N or something.
Oh, no, I don't want the single N.
Just a Veronica.
That's too much. That's too much. That's effeminate. Just give me the Y. Matt sent some context for this question that I'm not going to include. To me, the question is pretty simple.
Yeah.
And we can maybe speak into a little bit pastorally to the context. But I think brothers serving as pastors together is fine, except when it's not.
That's actually basically my answer.
There's nothing inherently wrong
with
with brothers serving as pastors together. At my last church in Vermont, there were two guys. They were not twins, but I had two brothers, the Carr brothers, who served on the elder team. They were both pastors, fantastic pastors, well known to the church, well respected by the church. There was no issue with them being pastors together. There was no accusations of nepotism or whatever you think would happen. I could see if you have maybe some really influential or power-wielding families in particular churches that are dysfunctional.
That's right.
And that may be someone in the background here, I don't know.
That's exactly right.
Where there's concerns about this. One of the contextual questions Matt sent was something like, a concern is that they would vote. Yeah,
like mess with the voting block.
That they would agree. And
yeah.
I was just like, don't we want our elders to agree? And so to me, that lent itself to thinking there's some kind of division, tension, conflict here, that someone's upset this is going to upset a balance of power that already exists. Otherwise, you want your elders to agree on a lot of things. And if brothers work well together and are like-minded, and they're both qualified biblically, I mean, good grief, Jesus had James and John. You got the sons of Zebedee, it's the sons of thunder.
That's right. I mean, I don't want to make light of the question, but the answer, in my opinion, is like there's obviously nothing biblically disqualifying about brothers. So yes, do it. Now, just like any pastoral team, you have to be aware of the optics of the team, and sometimes they're more than optics; they're real, present dynamics of the team. And you have to be able to pastor each other through those. So if there is an optic that these brothers are going to coerce the other guys into something, you got to figure that out. So the answer is quite simple. There's nothing biblically prohibiting. Do it, but do it well.
Yeah.
Maybe my answer is if I want to add flavor, I'm down with brothers, but not twins. Just kidding.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Your twins don't do it. That's too confusing.
Get a different haircut.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Yeah. No, it's, Matt, I think it's good, except when it isn't. And so there's nothing inherently or biblically wrong about it. This comes from Jacob via email. Jacob says, I've been reflecting on theological triage, especially as it relates to the latest SBC amendments, but it made me curious, how much doctrinal alignment do you require for speaking engagements? I would assume primary issues are necessary, but what about secondary issues such as egalitarianism, especially in leadership of the particular host? Jacob says, I asked because I was recently asked to speak at a retreat where the host church has some questionable, but certainly not heretical, secondary issues that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with. All right. Well,
I like this question, actually.
You accept speaking engagements. I accept speaking engagements. How do you decide how much agreement is
I like this.
necessary?
I think kind of a principle that I would operate under kind of just out of the gate would be something like an appearance is not an endorsement.
Yeah.
However, an appearance does communicate.
Yes.
It communicates something.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So an appearance is not an endorsement, but an appearance does communicate something. And you have to be wise with what is that something. And so, for example, context matters. So I have an academic side of my ministry and a lay level side of my ministry. It is very common for me to be asked to speak with other academics with whom I would have substantial differences. And that's kind of the context of academic ministry. And I say yes to those. I wouldn't be as lenient with those disagreements if it was for a lay level context. Now, that's a pretty obvious one, but this brother's probably not thinking in terms of like academic versus lay level or ministry level. Sorry, not lay level, but more ministerial, not academic. But it's a good example of how context matters. And so if I am, being brought in to speak on behalf of my denomination, the Southern Baptist Convention, my school, Midwestern Seminary, those are going to matter a little bit more. I'm going to want a little bit more alignment on, the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. But if I'm being brought in to like speak about the doctrine of incomprehensibility or something that I've written about, something that I know about, I'm going to be a little more lenient. Now, there's lines where it's like, all right, if you have this, I'm not going to cross those. But those are typically more primary, not tertiary, which is what this brother's asking about.
Yeah. I tend to I just think discernment is so key here. There's not like a hard line for me. I almost would say I would go preach the gospel anywhere that would have me, so long as they're not dictating what I can say. Yeah. I have a questionnaire. When someone sends like a booking inquiry through my website, we have a questionnaire that gets sent out, and it has the little disclaimer on there, like, inviting Jared to speak means that you're aware of his major doctrinal views and and that they'll, you're not asking him to misrepresent those or something like that. So it's just trying to make clear of like, I have convictions that I'm not willing to compromise what those convictions are. But there are certainly places where who might invite me, hey, you can say whatever you want, where I would be like, but to be there, as you said, I don't know, I'm not trying to endorse it. I'll go preach the gospel anywhere. But sometimes it may communicate.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I also have a little section that says, it asks, is Jared the only speaker? And then it says, if not, who are the other speakers? And then I have a little parenthetical in that thing that says something like, I'm just paraphrasing here, but it says something like, doctrinal views may prevent Jared from sharing stage with other speakers or something like that. It has some kind of thing about like, I'm weighing who I'm sharing the stage.
Because it communicates.
Or a conference docket with. I have never, as far as I can recall, I mean, I've been doing like public speaking since 2009. Oh, wow. Has it really been that long? So for 17 years. Is that right? Is it 17 years since 2009? So since 2009. That is right. What I thought I was going to say. For 12 years. For 17 years. And I can't remember a time where I said no because of that.
Yeah.
Jacob's asking about secondary things. Yeah. I have preached at Lutheran churches, at Anglican churches, at Episcopal churches, and it was when I say Episcopal, it was a more conservative.
Yeah.
In fact, it was a large enough church they had like in their. I was speaking for like the Reformed parish in this gigantic Episcopalian church. So like they knew who they were getting. They had Vodi Bakum as the previous year speaker. So you can just to tell you who I was following. But yeah, those are Paedo Baptists. I have preached at churches that were egalitarian, And I'm generally okay preaching the gospel in a place where I disagree on things like baptism or women's roles in leadership, provided that the event itself does not cause me to compromise that view. So as a complementarian, I don't believe that women should be pastors biblically, preach the word of God to the Lord's people. I think about a conference a little different than that.
Yeah.
Almost like an academic level. But I could say, again, discernment, if there was a female speaker at a conference, that in of itself wouldn't trouble me so much as if she was doing an exposition of Scripture as opposed to a topical presentation that used Scripture. And that may sound really arbitrary to some folks.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just sort of like, it's almost a discernment. Yeah, it's where my conscience kind of lands on that. So, and I haven't done a lot of conferences that had female speakers, but like I did one where Elise Fitzpatrick was a speaker. I'd done a student ministry conference that had, female speakers, and they weren't preaching sermons per se. They were giving conference talks. And I just didn't weigh that the same as I would as the Lord's Day gathering, preaching as with authority. But other people do. They don't, they think any, and I understand that. So Jacob, you just have to decide.
That's right.
On some of those secondary things. When you say you're not comfortable with it, there's a difference between I wouldn't do that and it violates my conscience to even share a conference stage or to speak in this environment. You should not go against your conscience.
Yep.
And so if it's making you uncomfortable, you feel like you're compromising some conviction, I don't think it's wrong for you to seek more comfort there and to kind of accept engagements that are in keeping with those convictions.
That's right. Yep.
That's kind of a meandering answer.
That's great. No, that's a great answer.
But I just, especially with theological triage, when you're applying it outside of church context or outside of your church context and the function of that church, sometimes you need some kind of discernment and decide where your conscience will allow you to be. I think not often, but every time this question comes up, I remember seeing John MacArthur on TBN. He was being interviewed by Kirk Cameron.
That's wild.
And it was just like, what?
Yeah.
But it was Kirk Cameron lobbing these sort of softballs up for John MacArthur to just hit out of the park. Yeah. And I thought, these guys went on there. They were invited because they're popular and known and what have you. They're not the typical TBN fare, but I'm sure they went because TBN said, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And, certainly MacArthur is not going to let TBN tell him what he can and can't say. And I'm sure, Kirk Cameron's the same way. And I thought those guys went where they were invited, even though they have, MacArthur especially, radically different, viewpoints. And it was a kind of example for me. So it doesn't mean that I would accept every invitation, but it does mean I'm kind of open. Like, where can I go where the gospel needs to be preached? I think of Matt Chandler. Yeah. Famously at the Code Orange revival, the Stephen Furtick thing. Yeah. And it was very controversial. I mean, he came and preached a message that was a high view of God's sovereignty, and it was loved by everyone in our tribe. Man, I'm glad he went there and did that, and was somewhat, disappointing to the hosts who thought this is not what this is for. Yeah. And some people say he shouldn't have done it. I'm saying, man, go into the lion's den and preach, the Lion of Judah. Yeah. But if your conscience won't let you do that, then don't do that.
Makes sense.
Okay. These next set of questions are coming from the private reserve.
Okay, the private reserve.
I think if these people are even still listening to the podcast, they're probably wondering, why have they never done my question? And it's because these questions, the rest of these questions, they all came from the For the Church Facebook page. Somebody messaged them. Ronnie and I have no access to the For the Church Facebook page. Actually, I think I may, but I don't ever go on there. It's run by the communications department. They have a whole office who's looking at those things. And so we don't see those. When I say this question came via Facebook,
you mean like a comment?
It came from a comment on my Facebook page.
That's right. Yeah.
So I have an author page, author Jared C. Wilson. You can go find it if you want. And I will post, hey, we're going to do a mailbag episode. Any questions or topics? People comment. That's where I get when I say this question came from Facebook, that's what I mean. Yeah. It came from my Facebook page. So some people, understandably, are going to the For the Church Facebook page.
Totally makes sense.
The best way to get a question to us is email. Go to mailbag@ftc.co. Send an email, mailbag, and that comes directly to me. I see those questions. But these we did not see. And so I don't know how long they were there, but comms department said, hey, we've got all these questions that have been sitting in the inbox. So I just want to apologize to these folks. First of all, another Matthew, I'm assuming this is a different than twin Matt.
No, it's the same one.
This is a different Matthew who sent to the For the Church Facebook page. Matthew, thank you for your patience. I don't know how long your question sat there. But Matthew says, I'm attending a new members class soon to join a church. Maybe he's already joined. I don't know. But know how long this question.
He's now pastoring that church.
You know what? It's just a helpful question. Regardless.
It is a good question, yeah.
I'm attending a new members class soon to join a church. I'm sure they'll have plenty of questions for me during the process. But as someone looking to join into fellowship with the church, what questions would you advise prospective members be asking pastors or elders prior to joining? I love this question.
It's a great question.
Because it's a thoughtful question.
Yeah.
I remember I was interviewing for prospective membership at my last church, a brother named Tim Hewitt, just a dear brother. And I was so encouraged because he was the first membership interview that I recalled where he had a list of questions. Where's this church going? What's the vision for what? And I was just like, this is going to be a stellar member.
Yeah.
Because he's someone who is invested,
he's
interested, he's asking deeper questions than just, do I like coming to this service?
That's right.
Which is a fine question to ask, but it's deeper. So I love that. What questions?
Could we maybe do like
I've got 3.
Assume the major ones are done. So like, the doctrine, they preach the gospel.
Yeah, he's in a new members class. I'm assuming that stuff's getting asked.
Yeah, so that stuff, of course, you should know what they believe. You should know they're expository primarily. Yeah. You should know they have plurality of elders, et cetera, whatever.
Yeah.
So all that's done. So beyond that, I really do love this question. And I would be honored as a pastor if people would ask me some of these questions.
I sometimes give them stuff.
Yeah, like you should ask me this.
I want you. Well, I want you to know this about the church.
That's right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I would love to hear a pastor answer or even have a member ask something like, what are you praying this church is in 5 years? Or even like more of like, what's a win kind of a question?
Okay.
Like for you all, what would cause in the next year, what would cause the elder team to be like elated? What would cause you guys to like rejoice together?
Yeah.
And that would expose some of the like, okay, I know what you believe, but like, what are you kind of prioritizing right now? That would be interesting, because if it's just like, our goal is to see 30 churches planted. Well, that actually is helpful because if you're not like willing to be a part of this, like growing up, sending out, that might not be the church for you.
Yeah.
Or if it's like our goal is to have the strongest discipleship program we can have in 5 years. Well, that might be like exactly what you want or not what you want, you know? So I think that could be maybe to start with a helpful question.
Yeah, very similar to one of the questions I wrote down, which is I think a good question to ask is, what are the informal values of this church?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Like, what does the church hold dear that I don't see in the statement of faith?
Yeah.
Like, it's important to this church. Could be, you could ask almost a negative version of this, like, what's the church's idols?
Yeah.
But
go slow down.
But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
What are things that are important to this church? I got an email a couple of weeks ago, actually, from a fellow who I think is planning to move to come. I got a bunch of different emails. I asked a bunch of different questions about the church. And I think this brother is coming to move to be a student at Midwestern, wants to know about Liberty Baptist Church. And one of the things he was asking was like, okay, I can see the statement of faith, covenant, or et cetera, et cetera. He's like, what is your church about that's not on the website?
Yeah.
And so, okay, wow, all right. So I was able to kind of walk through like tribally, so to speak, where we're at.
Yeah.
The expository preaching is a value of our church. You may not get that evidently from just our statement of faith. Our statement of faith is the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. You may not get expository preaching. I mean, you could look at our sermons and figure it out. But
that's right.
Expository preaching, family is a huge. So we're not a so-called family integrated church, but we have a number of families. It's a part of a value. It's part of a value in our culture. Of our congregation, families who bring their children to the worship service. We have lots of kids in the service. That's a value. If you struggle with that, you'll probably struggle at our church. That's a value. Missions is a huge value in our church. We're not just global missions, but church planting, trying to think through, okay, we sent out a church plant year previous. How do we start thinking through what did we learn from that? We don't want that to be our last one, et cetera. But we have numerous IMB missionaries who are members of our church, who've been sent from our church. So we have these really personal connections with folks on the mission field. Those, that's a part of the bloodstream of the church that makes up the personality.
Yeah.
We're convictionally one service.
Yeah.
I don't think you would pick that up on our website. So we are trying to aim, even as we grow, to stay in one service. And the decisions we're going to make about growth, building, relocation, all of that kind of hinges on.
Yes.
We don't be dogmatic about it, but we feel pretty strong we want to do that.
That was a good question.
I just think those are questions to ask.
How did you word that question again?
What are the informal values of the church?
That's helpful.
Yeah. So things that are, what does the church hold dear that you don't see in the statement of faith?
Yeah.
Any others for you that you would ask?
One that when I used to teach at an undergrad institution, primarily at Cedarville, when students were about to enter into finding a new church, one that is a little bit more theologically based that I think is actually a little more exposing than other questions is, when was the last time this church practiced church discipline?
Okay.
That can feel heavy, you're trying to pry into nosy stuff, but all I wanted to see is do they? Because I actually can probably figure out a lot about your ecclesiology by whether or not you do or don't practice church discipline. And it might be hey, we haven't. We're only a 5-year-old church, and we've actually never, the Lord's protected us. We don't have that. We have the mechanism in our bylaws. We know how to do it ecclesiologically. Or it's man, we're working through it right now. And you can even see what is their posture? Are they giddy about this? Are they sorrowful about this? So you can tell a lot about their theology and their posture in pastoral ministry by that question.
Yeah, that's good.
So, yeah.
Another question that I have is, what was the last significant challenge the church faced, and how did the congregation handle that challenge? Has the church recovered from that challenge? Number of years ago, I keep losing track now. It was 17 years ago when I started doing ministry. But when our senior pastor, disqualified himself, and people continue to come to our church in the 1-2 years in the wake of that, and our church was growing, which we were very encouraged by. We were looking for a lead pastor before we had kind of landed on the staffing model we have now. We were looking for a senior pastor, and so you could come 6 weeks in a row, hear a different guy preach every 6 weeks. We were just kind of rotating through the elders and a few other guys besides. So it was just kind of a grab bag of preaching voices, and people kept wanting to join the church. And in the membership interviews I was conducted as a pastor, part of it was kind of don't you want to wait until you see who the guy is, right? Why would you want to join the church? So somewhat in I guess in encouraging that way, but I wanted to kind of share with them, even though it was really uncomfortable, and maybe they didn't have any clue of what had just happened. And so this is we're kind of reeling from this, or this is kind of a thing right now. Yeah. Because I didn't want them to join the church and go, oh wait, what?
Yeah, that's right.
Pastor then suddenly connect dots that aren't there, or whatever.
Right.
I just wanted them to come in kind of open-eyed. And it doesn't have to be that big a thing. It can be some kind of, maybe, in some, churches, where I have friends, there's the death of a child, or just a beloved member, another beloved member of the church that was pretty recent, and it was shocking and just kind of wounded the congregation, and it could be something like that, just to be able to share what are some of the milestones that have affected the congregation. Maybe it's financial issue, something that's what crisis, and how has the church navigated that?
That's helpful.
How did the pastors pastor through that?
Those things often sit on the collective mind of the church,
right?
And it's helpful for someone to know that.
Yes, for folks to be aware. And then finally, for me, it's just sort of this is a very easy and common question, but how can I serve?
Yeah,
what are some ways? It's just encouraging for pastors to hear a member not just be thinking about, I want to join for the benefits and the privileges or the rights, but also for the obligations and the commitments, right?
Yep.
I want to be able to invest here.
That's right.
So how can I serve this church? And I think if a pastor struggles to answer the question, that could be a red flag.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, his answer may be, we have lots of serving opportunities. We want to get to know you before, et cetera, and that's fine. But if he's just sort of like, well, everything's kind of taken care of, or everything, that may be a red flag that he just expects you to kind of show up. And
my last one, just real quick, is very much in line with this one, which is, how can I uniquely encourage you? You and I both love pastors, and we're 4 pastors kind of in pastors' corners permanently. And I want pastors to be encouraged. I want them to enjoy the job at a deep level, like they're getting spiritual enrichment, but I also want them to have fun.
Yeah.
And I just love when sheep are easy to pastor.
Low maintenance
sheep who are actively looking for ways to encourage their pastors. That's just amazing.
That's good. All right. Thank you, Matthew. That's a really good question. Also from the private reserve, from the vault.
From the vault.
This is Alex. Alex says, how does a preacher find his voice?
Go like this.
Red, the blood of angry men.
We finally got a Les Mis soundtrack going. That's good. Yes.
We can't sing much more of that.
No.
Probably something flags it on YouTube.
Yes.
Copyright infringement.
That's right.
Maybe, I don't know.
Oh man,
you got to speed it up a little bit so that it doesn't pick up. Alex, I'll let running go, but I think the only way to do it is to just preach for a while.
Right. Yeah.
In some ways, I'll give you an illustration from the writing, because sometimes writing, there is a lot of talk about how do you find your voice in writing, and I think you have to do it a lot to where what's instinctual is you. I have noticed, this is the illustration that I use, and I think it's true for preaching too. When I'm writing a book, every book just about, the first few chapters are the hardest to write.
Oh yeah.
And it's usually not because I don't know what I want to say, or I don't have an idea of like what I'm trying to, I'm trying to sound a particular way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have some affectation, even if it's like some version of myself, but I'm like trying to sound some way. And that's it's an artifice.
Yes.
And it's hard to keep up. And your arms start getting a little weak. The further I write, the later chapters, they start to flow better.
Yep.
They may be a little sloppier. They may need more editing, but they sound more like me because I'm letting my guard down and I'm my unguarded self.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
The real me has sort of poked up through through the stones. I think that's true for preaching as well. Yep. When you start, you're trying to sound like, even if it's not intentional, like no one goes up, I'm trying to impersonate Matt Chandler or H.B. Charles or whatever. But you're the product of your influences or the voices in your head, and you're trying to sound like the preacher you want to be. And after a while, that's exhausting. It's too much, brain occupation with that. That's a different question than just I want to be, well-spoken or articulate, et cetera.
Yeah.
Or excellent at what I do. But you're trying to sound like some version of yourself that's not you. After a while, that's exhausting.
Yes. Yeah.
And especially when you get a little more comfortable in the pulpit, especially if you're preaching to the same people over time.
That's huge.
And you just become more yourself in front of them, and it's family.
Especially if
your voice pokes up through the stones.
If they have relational equity to be like, why did you sound like that?
Like that. What are you doing?
That's not you.
The preacher voice or whatever.
Like you sound like Dwight Schrute trying to give a speech.
Yeah,
banging on the pulpit. It's not you. No, it's interesting because there are times like when I have young men who are trying to become pastors in our church where I actually will instruct them, hey, I want you to listen to this particular preacher and notice how he does this thing. So like maybe it's, you would never struggle with this given this podcast, but maybe like your transitions from one point to another are a little awkward, and you need to actually like find a way to be a little more natural in going from like an introduction to an exposition or whatever it may be. And
see, I would probably recommend a guy write rather than go listen to someone.
Well, yeah, and that'd probably be a little bit of both.
I got you.
Hey, this person does this exceptionally well. So like get a few sermons of theirs in your head and then try to write it out. Write yourself smooth or write yourself clear. So there's times where I'll use that of like, actually, I want you to imitate them a little bit more because it's going to shape you in a good way.
Yeah.
But I think preaching in front of the same people over and over is the answer because they will know if you're faking it, especially if you're spending any time around them. And so I think like finding your voice is the thing that's left whenever your desire for a particular audience leaves your head. So like if you're like, oh, I'm trying to get this person's ear, or like I'm trying to get this person's applause, or I'm trying to get this person's follow. Like when that stuff leaves your head and you're preaching to the real people who are really in front of you, that's when you'll find your voice.
You become more yourself.
That's right.
Yeah, and just one last thing, Alex, be careful in terms of who you're listening to, that you listen a little more widely. If you're only listening to like one preacher or two preacher podcasts, you're going to unintentionally start to sound like them, pick up their affectations, pick up their cadence, all those sorts of things. And you become a bad sort of, copy or impersonation. So either listen less often or listen more widely. Pick a bigger variety of preachers so that you have more variegated influence and less direct mimicry will come about. So hopefully that was helpful. All right, last question, also from the Private Reserve limited edition small batch Facebook
micro lot.
Micro what?
Micro lot.
Micro
it's a
lot
coffee term.
Okay, this comes from Paul. Paul, who Ronnie wants to have coffee with, according to the last episode.
That's right, yeah.
Paul says, I've served my church in various ways. Well, way to go,
all
Paul.
right, that's a flex.
All right, brag much.
I'm
sorry.
I'm
getting a little punchy. This is the last. We've recorded several episodes. Paul says, I'm sorry, Paul. I've served my church in various ways the last 8 years and was even on staff for 2. There are some secondary issues that I don't agree with my pastor or elders on, mainly women in ministry, certain aspects of spiritual gifts. These views are not preference, but I believe after studying Scripture, my heart has changed. The church is more charismatic, while I lean more conservative. I don't know if I'd pit those against each other.
You heard it. Yeah,
just kidding. But I think I know what he means.
I know
He's just more
means,
restrained or
That's right.
In demeanor or in worship. Well, I lean more conservative, but it's a good church. I've recently been asked to pursue eldership. Is this a bad idea if I'm not in unity in those areas? My pastor believes we can still have unity, but I feel there will be inevitable disunity at some point. Thank you. My short answer, Paul, is I think it's a bad idea.
Okay.
I just do. Especially like women in ministry. I mean,
women in ministry is a big one.
Secondary issues are how a church is organized.
That's right.
It's different. If he's talking about tertiary issues,
that's right.
My pastor and I disagree on, millennial views or something like that. That still could be important in some churches where that's a feature of the church or something. It's a statement of faith or something. But tertiary views, and I have elders at my church who disagree on this. They think we should be aligned on just about everything. I think we can disagree on tertiary views. I think that represents, sets a good example to the congregation, actually, of how you can have unity and charity. But secondary views is how the church is organized.
Yeah.
So if you have elders who are egalitarian or I think even like charismatic. If you're a cessationist, I don't know how you would pastor in a church that operates in the charismatic gifts or wants to. Yeah. If you don't even believe those gifts are and signs are for today, or if you don't believe women should be pastors, but you have other pastors who do think women should be pastors or can preach to the it's not a good idea.
Yeah. My general feedback would be it's not a good idea. I think the one nuance I might be able to give here is there is like a tertiary, it's almost like where does this land in theory and where does this land in practice when it comes to eldership? An actual example, when we planted Emmaus, there was 4 of us, and the other 3 brothers were continuationists. I'm a convictional cessationist.
Okay.
So that was like a question I had to wrestle with. Was I don't believe the gifts of the Spirit are valid forms of worship today.
But was the church going to have?
That's the thing. That's what I was about to say.
Okay, right.
Is in theory, we were disagreement, but in practice, those brothers were functional cessationists. We didn't have like an open microphone for people to give a prophecy.
Yeah.
There was no speaking in tongues, and so it was like in practice, I'm okay with this.
I mean, it's the same. I mean, like at Liberty, I'm the lone continuationist.
Yeah.
The other brothers are cessationists.
And I'd pastor with you.
And our church, our church would be functionally a cessationist church in that way.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm happy to pastor there, they're happy to have me pastor there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's a great example of that's one of the issues he brought up. But it's like, what is it the church actually trying to do?
Right.
I told the guys I'm happy to pastor with you, but the moment you have a prophecy time in the church, I would bounce.
Yeah,
I would not be comfortable with that.
I got you.
So that's where it's
why
like,
aren't you open to the Spirit.
Yeah, I'm just
why are you trying to quench the Spirit, Ronnie Kirk?
It's another episode for another day.
The wind comes and blows. You have no idea where it's coming
that's
from,
right,
where it's going. And such it is with the Spirit.
So maybe we wouldn't pastor together. Just kidding.
Well, I think, and that is a significant thing if the church is wanting to, operate. I think even more significant, because in some ways, that can be you act like you're suggesting there's some kind of permeable layer between tertiary and secondary. I think so too. When we push things up into it. So some denominations will say you've got to be premillennial.
That's right.
To me, that's a tertiary view. But that church or denomination has made it a secondary view.
Yeah.
I think women in ministry is even more significant
than
the spiritual gifts
without
question.
A doubt, totally.
And because that's something that can come up at any time.
Anytime.
It's not like the spiritual gifts question where you'd almost have to make a concentrated effort.
That's
Although
right.
I suppose like if someone just started speaking in tongues in a service, the elders would want to have to discuss how do we handle that maybe. But I just think women in eldership,
very
or
much
women preaching is such a significant issue that I just don't see how it would work.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know that's a hard answer to give, Paul. That's our advice. Probably by this time you've already made up your mind or made a decision. I don't have a date for your question, but I think the question is good and probably could be instructive for others as well. As always, if you have questions or topics for us you'd like us to cover on the mailbag, send them via email to mailbag@ftc.co, mailbag@ftc.co. And if you enjoy the podcast, please give us a good review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to or watch your favorite podcast. And until next time, may Jesus be big in your church.